Today's Group 7's Brian Lee, Luz Maria Soto, Aaron Love, and Xin Yu Wang will be presenting to you the expectancy violations theory. So, what is the expectancy violations theory? It's a study of how individuals react to when others have violated their social norms and expectancies. The expectancy violation theory is adapted from the nonverbal expectancy violation model about violation of personal space created by people for themselves.
Who created this theory? Judy K. Bergen, an established communication professor at the University of Arizona, was the first one to publish this theory. She published it in her book about nonverbal communication models. In her publication, she lays out the 7 propositions that this theory is composed of. 1. Distancing and personal space expectations are a function of the social norms and the known idiosyncrasies of the interactants. 2. The communication outcomes of an interaction are a function of the rewardingness of the initiator, the direction of deviations from expectations, and the magnitude of the deviation. 3. When distancing is perceived as a statement of initiator's regard for the target, closer proximity is interpreted as a positive regard, and farther distance is interpreted as negative regard. When distancing is equated with threat, closer proximity is perceived as more threatening, and farther distances are less threatening. 4. Extremely close proximity is perceived as an aversive and produces discomfort. 5. The more rewarding the initiator, the closer the location of the threat threshold. 6. Violations are more tolerated and preferred by rewarding communicators than non-rewarding ones. 7. The variance of nonverbal acts and its violation status interacts such that a. Positive expectancy violations achieve better communication outcomes than positive confirmations. B. Negative expectancy violations achieve worse communication outcomes than negative confirmations. Or C. Positive expectancy violations and confirmations achieve better communication outcomes than negative expectancy confirmations and violations.
So, expectancies are what individuals expect to happen in a situation based off their experiences and social norms.
There are 3 influential factors that determine these expectancies: the interactant, the environment, and the nature of the interaction. Factor 1, the interactant. The interactant is the personal traits that would affect one's interaction with others. These include things such as age, race, sex, social status, etc. The second factor is the environment. The environment is determined by the amount of space available. For an example, an unexpected interaction in an enclosed space like an elevator might propose different threats than an interaction in an open space like a public park. The last factor is the nature of the interaction. There are 3 types. 1, the purpose of the interaction. An example of this might be light conversation when killing time or working to convince a boss about something. The second is the formality of the interaction, whether you're at home with family or potentially in an office with a recruiter. And the third is the social norms. These include personal distance, manners, cultural cues, etc. Based on those 3 factors, we have 2 different types of expectations. The first expectation is predictive. This defines communication or interactions based upon what occurs within the context of a particular environment and the relationship of the communicators. An example of this would be a student having to wash the dishes every day after school. If they don't, it is known as a predictive discrepancy because it's something they're expected to do. The second is a prescriptive expectation. This is based on behavior and social norms which are appropriate within a specific context of communication. An example of this would be greeting someone with a kiss as opposed to greeting them with a handshake. There are 2 types of variances. The first is the communicative reward. This refers to the positive or negative characteristics that an individual brings to an interaction. An evaluation is made about the person who committed the violation of expectancy and then has a potential reward or punishment based on the encounter. Changing expectancy variables leads to different expectations of how a person should behave. Some positive factors include status, good looks, acceptance, trust, liking, and appreciation. Some negative factors are disinterest, disapproval, distrust, and rejection. An example of this is If a speaker is presenting, they're going to be more willing to give a mental reward to someone who's showing interest as opposed to someone who's sitting there on their phone during the lecture. The second is the violence variance. This captures how nonverbal messages that violate our expectations are interpreted. The variance of a message represents the general response to the nonverbal violation. These violations can be interpreted as having a positive or a negative variance. A positive variance would result from exceeding an expectation. A negative variance would come from something less than expected. One example of this might be, if somebody proposed to you, you'd accept the interaction as a surprise, and then you would decide whether it was a positive thing or a negative thing based on how you felt about the person. Here are some examples in mainstream media.
You know, I have a friend who works at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. How'd you like a behind-the-scenes tour?
Really? You could do that?
Easily.
It wouldn't be any trouble?
Of course not.
When do we go?
How about right now? I'm ready.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, let me get my coat.
Elaine, what do you say?
Well, I don't think so, Aaron. I have plans.
Oh. How about you, Jerry? I'm sorry. You sure? Could examine the artwork up close. Maybe I'll try and catch up with you.
Oh, no, that'll happen.
All right.
In this episode of Seinfeld, labeled The Close Talker, the main character clearly violates the personal space of the people he's conversing with. They seem to know each other, so they don't appear to feel as though they're in danger, but you can see, especially with the girl, that she feels uncomfortable by the proximity he is to her. They seem to be willing to ignore his violation of what would be an expected as a reasonable distance between people during the conversation.
Ask me about my wiener! Ask me about my wiener! Hey, ask me about my wiener!
By this man yelling wiener in public and chasing people, he violates the bystander's expectancy of what would happen on a normal day in a quad. Because they are in a public location, he does not pose a threat of danger, so people are willing to overlook.
Interviewing for jobs blows ass.
What do you say we interview you?
All right. How much money do you make a year before taxes?
Okay, I'm actually not comfortable answering that.
Have you ever farted on an airplane?
Who is this gentleman sitting behind you?
Hello, Ms. Lady.
Because this takes place in the formal setting of a job interview, the expectation being violated is that the interviewer is supposed to ask the questions. He is then taken farther aback by the odd and informal questions that he is asked. We decided to explore the expectancy violation in the real world. This is what we did. We went up to people who we didn't know, but someone in our group did, and did something unexpected. We later revealed it was for a video. After that, we asked them how they felt during the experience / how comfortable or uncomfortable they were with what had just happened. We prompted them to consider the different factors that we talked about earlier.
When we sat so close to you?
Honestly, a little uncomfortable because there's no way to like be nice about moving over. You're just like, why are you in my personal space bubble?
Would it have been weirder if we were a different gender?
Probably. I probably would have felt more uncomfortable because I didn't feel like I was at risk. I just felt uncomfortable.
So what did you think when it came to that costume? That was normal. My bugs. Yeah, it's fine. It's true.
I love it. Would it have been weirder if it was somebody of a different gender?
No, if it was someone I didn't know, I'd be kind of weirded out, but that's pretty much it.
Cute.
How did it feel to have a random girl come hug you?
It was fine.
Did it make you feel uncomfortable?
Yes.
Were you expecting that to happen?
No, that I was not.
Were you expecting somebody to come and sit that close to you?
No, I wasn't.
Was it something that made you feel comfortable?
Comfortable? No, it didn't.
Would you have been more or less uncomfortable had it been somebody like of a different age or gender? I'm here.
No.
So regardless of like age and gender, it would have been a weird situation.
Yeah, I think so.
What if it was like if we had walked up to you in an elevator or an enclosed space and we'd stood close to you, how would that make you feel?
I think I'd feel equally as uncomfortable, but in that instance, like depending on who it was, I'd feel more or less safe as well. So if you were to come up to me in an elevator, I'd think it was weird, but if like some like really tall male was to do that, I'd probably feel like also in danger as well as uncomfortable.
How did it play out? People generally had the same idea that things were uncomfortable, but none of these situations were concerning to them. This has to do with the environment we were in, the nature of the interaction, and the interactant. Our environment. Our coho at UC Davis is fortunately a very safe, open environment. Most people are friendly and unexpected interactions occur every day. We also are a university, so on any given day there's a good chance someone might be doing something weird, like us, for a project or research. Because of this, none of the people we interacted with were upset by our violations to what was expected. Our intent was not malicious and therefore did not appear to be so. Our interactions were very casual. The interactant. In all of the cases, our interactant was someone of the same age and level of authority, which leads to casual interactions. We tried having people of opposite genders approach each other, but because of the mindset of college students, it did not seem to make a difference. This contributed to the fact that people were uncomfortable, but not enough for them to make a big deal about it or feel the need to act out in response. Our final recap. The expectancy violation refers to why and how people react to the unexpected. This includes verbal and nonverbal cues. It is determined by three main factors that contribute to our expectations: the interactant, the environment, and the nature of the interaction. And lastly, these reactions can be both positive and negative.